Good evening. I want to just start off by saying I'm incredibly honored to be here with all of you tonight. I hope my words are meaningful in some way. I feel very humbled by the amazing work of the people who are just honored and who have set the precedent for so many young people who are doing and engaging in social justice work, community service, philanthropy, and transformative justice organizing. I want to thank Rashad also, who I've known almost, I don't know, where is he? He's not here, right? Almost for more than a decade. Met him when we were doing Arab census work to get us counted on the census in 2010. That didn't happen. It's also not happening in 2020, which I'll refer to. But I want to thank Rashad and the Arab American Civic Council for all the incredible work that they do in the community here, and for really finding a way to nurture political advocacy work that is in tune with what grassroots organized communities are talking about. So it's not a political advocacy disconnected from people in the streets, only being organized in DC. I want to honor that. Okay, so I want to start off by saying this. We are no longer at the brink of, and we are not past, the clouds of smoke, debris, and shrapnel of catastrophe, or Nakba. A Palestinian youth from Gaza last week, after the massacre of the Israeli military of Palestinian young people protesting at the border in the Great March of Return actions, he made a video and he said, "There are people in the world who inherit money. There are people in the world who inherit capital. We as Palestinians, we inherit catastrophes. Generation after generation are born into catastrophes." The distinction here is that the Palestinians, we were never alone in catastrophe, and we're not alone today in catastrophe. Catastrophe has engulfed almost every corner of the world. Catastrophe dictates the lives of precarious bodies everywhere, even in our own backyards, in these streets over here. Catastrophe is what makes certain bodies worthy and others disposable, certain bodies free and other bodies unfree, certain lives worth living and other lives that would better off be dead. This is catastrophe. A German Jewish philosopher, Walter Benjamin, one of the most profound intellectuals of the humanities, said that things are the status quo is the catastrophe. That things are the status quo is the catastrophe. About 4 hours ago, I spoke on the phone with two cousins, Palestinian young men who are from Yarmouk refugee camp. They're now in Athens, Greece, as refugees themselves as a result of the war. And I called them to offer my condolences for their uncle and their other cousin who died yesterday under shelling in the camp. And I asked them, I stumbled on my words, don't know what to say, other than, I'm sorry for your loss, Allah yarhamhun. And I asked them, what can we do? And they said, just pray for us. But the irony, the paradox that I found was that these two young people were people who don't resort only to prayer. Certainly spirituality, for anyone in the world, for any religion in the world, is a way for us to cope. It's a way for us to survive. It's a way for us to have something to look forward to despite all that is devastating. But catastrophe forces people to think of the impossible. When Walter Benjamin talked about catastrophe being the status quo, he also talked about it as an opportunity. Because when people have nothing left, they start to think about things they could have never imagined. They start to envision worlds that people told them were never possible. They start to see ideas that they never considered before. And that's what's happening in our region. That's what's happening in our communities here. When attack is constant, when a feeling of deprivation is constant, when you feel that you are alone and isolated, you will find what you need to do to survive. The question then becomes, why can't our brothers and sisters in Yemen, in Syria, in Palestine, in Iraq, in Egypt have a clear answer for us as Arab Americans living in the belly of the beast of what they need us to do? We have to generate that answer for our homelands, and we have to generate that answer for what is happening here to our communities here. If we are not overcome by grief and sorrow, if we are not distracted in our day-to-day lives, if we are not enraged by the catastrophe that we are witnessing in the world, not just in our home countries, but here in the United States as well, if we are not enraged by that, then there is something missing. That's what I want to speak to more today. Community building, what is it that's missing? The first option is that maybe we are too disconnected from catastrophe. Certainly that's not true for all of our communities here in the United States, but if we are not overcome by grief and anger, then maybe we are disconnected from catastrophe. Maybe, just maybe, that when catastrophe is deployed in the name of democracy and freedom and civility and national security, maybe we are the people who receive the benefits. Maybe we are the free and the civil and the democratic and the secure. But who then is on the other side of that? Who then is on the other side of that? That's what we have to ask ourselves as Arab Americans, Arabs living in the United States. In the name of these things, our people are being slaughtered. In the name of these things, members of our community here are being secretly spied on and have been for decades, starting with the Nixon administration's Operation Boulder, which spied on scores of young Arab organizers who were politically active, fighting for justice in our countries. So we have to be critical about when those words are used, to cover up catastrophe, or when those words are used to make us feel free and democratic and secure. Because our freedom and democracy and security is tied to the fact that it was stolen from other people, Arab lives and non-Arab lives. It's stolen by young black men who are targets, who have a target police killing on their backs every time they walk out on the street. It's stolen by undocumented people who came to this country because they couldn't live in their homeland because the way that the United States partook in economic projects that threw third world countries into debt and debt and debt. It is those freedoms that are stolen from other people that we enjoy. And it is for those reasons we need to find ways to be in tune with the catastrophe that exists all around us that we cannot always see and feel firsthand. Second, maybe many of us do come from families and communities who have experienced the trauma of war and exile and refugeehood and racial surveillance and discrimination and hatred and oppression and bigotry and inequity in the United States. Maybe we do. Maybe we've felt it. And maybe the question of this catastrophe has made us feel paralyzed by shock. What we are witnessing today has shocked us. Homes laid to rubble. Entire countries burnt to ash. Places that many of us once knew and grew up in, no longer there. 82% of Yemenis needed humanitarian assistance last year. We all know how much worse it's gotten since then. We all know what we're seeing on the television screen in Syria. So if we are shocked, if we're paralyzed by the trauma, if we're paralyzed by the coping that we need to do, then maybe what we need to consider as a community is coming together to make collective activism, collective organizing, collective advocacy therapeutic for our souls in a world that is trying to destroy us, in a world that's trying to make us soulless. Maybe we need to come together and think of the arsenal of emotions inside of each one of us as something that can be collective and productive to create whole persons in our community. Because I'll tell you this, the division that we're seeing on the Arab street, the division that we're seeing in Arab communities, the division that we're seeing in Arab families, across lines of class and culture and generations and politics and ideologies, is unlike something we've ever seen before. So if we are to come together unified as a community, strong as a community, we need to actually build up our people as well. We need to heal our souls that have been destroyed by everything we have gone through and witnessed happening in our community. We need to build up the sense that collective organizing is a space that can actually be a place that doesn't destroy us and bring us down, but builds us up and empowers us. That's what we need to think of. I have one last point, and I promise I'm done. The third is that maybe, if we are not experiencing the grief and the anger and the pain of what is happening in our communities and in our world, maybe it's because we have become overcome by fear and pessimism and paranoia and hopelessness that we're surrendering. Maybe we don't look at the news. Maybe we're not engaging. Maybe we don't open the Arab American Civic Council's emails. Maybe we stop giving money because we're like, they're all the same. Maybe we stopped going to meetings. Maybe we stopped sharing things on social media because we felt that there was nothing that we could do that could impact any change. I know this. We all come from families where there's someone there nagging you saying, why are you wasting your life? Why are you spending your time doing this? تفكري بدك تحرري فلسطين? We know that. People tell us that all the time. And they've ingrained that hopelessness and fear and pessimism in us. And we believed it because of how damaged our communities have become. But we have to be careful not to blame the victims. In the United States, as we've heard earlier, the people who have been honored, we have a rich legacy of political mobilization and a philanthropy and a volunteer service. And our institutions have drastically been shut down and crushed by the level of anti-Arab racism and Islamophobia and anti-Palestinianness that exist in this society. Through audits, through special investigative reports, through secret surveillance of our organizations, through the criminalization of our community leaders, including the Holy Land Five and Rasmiya Auda and Sami al-Ariyan and all of these other community leaders who have been deported or criminalized for advocating for Palestine and against wars in our region. We have survived a lot, even though our institutions are not where they should be. And even though we do not have a new generation of leadership quite ready to continue on the next generation of organizing work. But we have the ingredients because catastrophe still exists. Our bonds to our community and our homeland still exist. Our power in numbers and in resources and in culture and in smarts exists. We have a new generation who has experienced firsthand what it's like to grow up as an Arab or a Muslim in the United States post-September 11th, and that has fueled their critical political consciousness more than anything else. They have taken to the streets in their universities, advocating for boycott, divestment, and sanctions of Israel, advocating against war, advocating for social justice. We have the ingredients. What we need is a little collective strategy and organizing. What we need is for the people who think that they cannot be the student activist at every event or organizing every protest to believe that you have a role. If you can't be on a board, you need to give more money. If you can't, yeah, you got me, Athens. if you can't be at a meeting, you need to find a way to open your house for young people to find a place to meet. I can't even tell you how much we struggle with finding a place to meet. Right? We can all do something to support collective organized community work. And last but not least, on individual levels, separate from the collective spheres of where we organize and where we are doing our advocacy work, on individual levels, it is time to amp up our voices as a community. That means at the ballots, that means calling congressional representatives, that means writing to them, That means making our voices known. But honestly, we cannot do this as a community without genuine reciprocal forms of solidarity with other people. And so for you, when you wake up in the morning, it's really important to think of, who am I going to talk to today and about which topic?